In the rhythm of everyday life, we find security in our routines. However, we don't realize how quickly that sense of safety can be shattered, leaving those around us wondering if we can ever truly be safe. Despite this fear, many find solace in knowing that one way or another, the truth will always come to light. Hi, I'm Cam,
And I'm Dev.
and you're listening to Criminalish, a true crime podcast where two best friends trade stories ranging from the wild and wacky to the downright messed up. So, Dev, today I'm going to be talking about the murder of Genai Coleman that took place in Atlanta, Georgia in July 2008. Have you heard of this case before?
I don't believe so.
I will say it is probably similar to the previous case we covered, where it's infamous for a different reason that doesn't focus on the victim. So I do want to make sure we talk about Genai and all the great things that she did in this case today, similar to how we did last week with Becky.
Sounds great. I can't wait to learn about her. But before I get to learn about the amazing and wonderful person that Genai was, what we drinking, friend?
So, Fran, today we are drinking some guava lemonade. It is made in-house at the Mexican spot that is near my apartment, and I got some for us today.
Beautiful. And in honor of spooky season, we put it in spooky glasses. Shout out to my friend Brett, who got me these for my birthday a few years ago. I still have them, and I love them. So, cheers.
Cheers to spooky season.
She is very good, very refreshing.
I almost forgot I was recording the podcast. I was about to down the whole glass. So, no trigger warnings for today's case other than the fact that we will be talking about the murder of somebody. So, to get started, Genai G. Coleman was born on October 2nd, 1967 in Elkhart, Indiana. We don't know much about her childhood, but I do know that she had at least one sister and had moved to Georgia at some point in her life. And from what I could find about Genai, it was clear that she loved her community and she loved children. She was a mother to 3 adopted daughters and also was an elementary school teacher in DeKalb County, Georgia. And teaching was a passion for her. Her students adored her and she taught them structure, patience, and kindness. She was also active in her church, and she was a reservist in the U.S. Navy and had completed her military training to be certified as a military police officer. She was described by those around her as dependable, grounded, and caring. And one of her daughters even said she was someone that would listen and not judge, which reminds me of the trend where people be both listening and judging, but Genai wasn't one of them. She would allow you to come to her, be vulnerable without the fear that the person you were being vulnerable with would turn it back on you or judge you. And I feel like that is so rare to find in people.
Absolutely. It's so rare to find that in people, but also like to find somebody who has the patience to be an elementary school teacher. God bless her.
Yes.
But that's not surprising to me either. If you're the kind of person who opens your heart up to 3 adopted children, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And also that point too, like to adopt 3 children, adopt 3 girls and raise them as your own, and to have such a close relationship with them. Like she had a close relationship with her daughters. They knew that if they called her, she was going to pick up.
That's amazing. Do we know how old her daughters were when they were adopted?
I'm not sure. I don't know how old they were when they were adopted. So I don't know if she adopted them as teenagers or as younger children. But either way, it's something that not a lot of people are willing to do.
Absolutely.
And all this brings us to the evening of July 18th, 2008. This evening, Genai was sitting in her car waiting outside of the Gwinnett Place Mall. She was actually waiting for one of her daughters to get off of work. Because her daughter's job was pretty far away from where she lived, Genai would actually come to the mall and just sit there, scroll on her laptop until her daughter got done with work. But unfortunately, her night would be cut short when suddenly a man approached the driver's side of her car, opened the door, and demanded that she get out before firing a single shot into the car and pulling Genai out. A bus driver who was nearby, who witnessed the attack, stated that they heard the gunman cursing at Genai and calling her a quote-unquote motherfucker before he fired the shot. After pulling her out, the gunman then drove off in her car. Genai staggered away, clutching her chest, and yelled for help. First responders arrived at the scene within 2 minutes and found Genai on the ground with a gunshot wound to her chest. She was rushed to the hospital, but she would unfortunately pass from the gunshot wound about an hour after the shooting. And even though we know that this is what happened to Genai, at first, she actually didn't have any identification on her, so she was treated as a Jane Doe, and police didn't know who she was.
Oh my God, this is devastating. Also, what in the Grand Theft Auto is going on? That's the craziest thing ever. Especially not to be that person, but to be that person. At Gwinnett Mall?
Right.
There are places in Atlanta where I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that happened. I'm going to be real. But Gwinnett Mall?
Yeah. And I'm sure Genai felt safe sitting in her car. She was also parked pretty close to the bus station. So it's not like she was in a secluded area per se.
Right. And finally, shout out to the paramedics who got there immediately. Even if they were unable to save her life, that response is amazing.
Right.
And then to just run up on her and shoot her while she's still in the car, you didn't even give her a chance to run out or anything like that.
Right.
This is giving, no, you wanted to kill that woman. You wanted to kill somebody, not, oh, I need to steal a car to escape or some other stupid reason to do this to her. That is sick.
Yeah, and I also feel so bad for her family because, of course, they didn't know that she was there, and police didn't know who she was to contact them in that moment. So when police start their investigation, they're as perplexed as you are, wondering who would commit such a brazen attack. And initially, they were thinking this could be a domestic violence situation, especially with the witness hearing the person call her quote unquote motherfucker and cursing at her. So it was super important for them to figure out who this person was, because that could be the key to figuring out who killed her and attacked her like this. And soon after her passing, Genai's sister, Camelia, called the police and told them that she thinks Genai was in the area of the shooting, but she couldn't get in contact with her, and she had never showed up to pick up her daughter from her job. And knowing how much Genai cared about her daughters, knowing how much she just cared about those around her, her family knew that something had to be wrong because this was not like her. And when she told police that Genai was a 40-year-old Black woman who drove a gold car, police had a strong suspicion that this could be the woman who was shot the night before. When investigators went to meet with Camelia at her house, they saw a picture of Genai on the fridge, and this solidified their belief that she was the victim. And this was only further confirmed when they showed Camelia a picture of Genai from the hospital, and she confirmed that that was her sister. And I just can't imagine losing somebody you love that quickly. But I'm sure Genai's family knew that something was wrong. It was probably one of those feelings that they had, especially with her not picking her daughter up.
Exactly. They for sure knew something was off. And especially with how quickly they called the police, which I also respect and appreciate. At the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that your gut 99 times out of 100 is correct. And if you feel like something's wrong, it is wrong.
Right.
I've always had this feeling that even in media and how it's displayed, you finding out that you've lost somebody through the media or through police call or through you having to go and identify their body or something like that. I have always thought that's an extremely devastating and almost more traumatic way to lose somebody, is having to go through that process of being like, yep, that's them.
Yeah.
And having to verbalize and acknowledge that this person is gone.
And be confronted with that reality too.
Exactly. And have it be so immediate and in your face.
Yeah. So now police knew who their victim was. And fortunately, they would get several more clues soon after Genai's death. About 12 hours after the shooting, Genai's car, a gold Dodge Stratus, was found abandoned in the parking lot of a shopping plaza in Forest Park, which was about 40 miles from the crime scene. When police processed the vehicle for evidence, they found fingerprints on the door frame and a used cigarette butt under the driver's seat. The cigarette butt stood out to them as a key piece of evidence because they were able to confirm with Genai's family that she did not smoke, and she was strict about people not smoking in her car, which agreed, because you not about to stink my car up.
Absolutely.
Smoke sticks.
Exactly. Oof.
Police were also able to extract DNA from the cigarette butt, but it would take months to get back results and see if anybody in the system was a match.
Why?
Because especially back in 2008, it wasn't just like, oh, put it in, ping, 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 ding, we got a match. It took a lot longer.
Got you. Because in my head, I was thinking, oh, good, you stupid son of a bitch. You left behind DNA. I was about to be like, okay, cool. We're going to be an open shut 30-minute episode.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind. Never mind.
But police weren't just going to sit around and wait for the DNA results to come back. They still thought that there could be a domestic violence angle to this, and so they wanted to dig deeper into the other evidence they had and into Genai's personal life. And when police interviewed the bus driver who witnessed the attack, they described the shooter as a black male, about 6 feet tall and between 40 to 50 years old, who was wearing a white shirt with green sleeves or some type of white and green top. And even though they now had a description of her killer, they still wanted to focus on the motive. And to do that, like I said, they dug deeper into Genai's personal life. When they asked Genai's family whether she was involved in any current romantic relationships or had any recent formal romantic relationships, her family told investigators about a man named Joel Ubira. Genai had met him in the military, and her family knew that they spoke frequently. And when detectives spoke to him, he told them that he and Genai were just really close friends. They discussed being romantic, but had decided against it due to their 20-year age difference. I think Joel was the younger one.
Oh.
He also said that he didn't think Genai was dating anyone, and before detectives ended their conversation, he asked that they get justice for Genai and find out who did this. On top of Joel seeming genuinely shocked by the news of Genai's death, detectives were able to rule him out because he was stationed in Japan at the time of her murder.
Sounds like a pretty airtight alibi to me.
That's as good as an alibi as anybody can have. And so they continued to look into her personal life to find any sort of strife or tension that could have caused an attack like this. They discovered that there could have been some tension between Genai's family and her daughter's baby father, Patrick. He was actually one of the last people outside of her family to see Genai alive, as she dropped off her grandchild just hours before her murder. When detectives interviewed him, he said that he didn't know much about Genai aside from what Felicia, her daughter, had told him. He would see her a couple times a week, but these were pretty short interactions, and the longest time they'd spent together was when his son, her grandson, was born in the hospital. He said he never had a problem with her and couldn't think of anyone who did. He described her as a nice person who was very down to earth. And when police asked him what he had done the rest of the evening and night after Genai dropped off his son, Patrick said that he was at his mom's house with his family and he'd left around midnight to go out with some friends. After verifying his alibi and not being able to find any actual motive, police also ruled out Patrick as a suspect. But even though they couldn't find any leads in Genai's personal life, all was not lost. Police were canvassing the area around the crime for any surveillance footage, and they were actually able to find footage of a man at the Quick Trip nearby who matched the witness's description. In this footage, he was seen purchasing a pack of Bronson Light Long cigarettes, which was the same brand of the used cigarette butt that they found in Genai's car. When they further reviewed the footage, they saw that this man had come to the Quick Trip at least 3 times that night over the course of 2 hours, twice to purchase alcohol and once to purchase cigarettes. Additional surveillance footage showed the same man walking near the location in Forest Park where they'd found Genai's car abandoned. When they showed this footage to Genai's family, they didn't recognize the man in the video. They'd never seen him before. Police also went to the news and shared this video with the hope that someone else in the community might recognize him. But they had no luck with this. On August 6, 2009, over a year after Genai's murder, detectives would finally get a break in the case. They received a hit in CODIS from the DNA on the cigarette butt. The DNA was linked to a man named Donald Eugene Smith, a convicted felon who'd previously been convicted on charges related to a bank robbery. When they dug into this man even further, they found out that he'd recently been fired from his job for threatening his manager. And when they showed the surveillance video to his former coworkers, they agreed that the person in the video looked like Donald. When investigators dug deeper, they also found that a phone number Donald had listed on his job application was active on the night of the murder, both near the crime scene and in Forest Park. And with all this evidence, police secured a warrant for Donald's arrest, and on February 3rd, 2010, he was arrested.
Girl, my only commentary is how the hell is Donald related to Genai? How does Donald know Genai? Or am I about to be real pissed off and this is some kind of random, he just felt like killing somebody today? That's the only question I got.
So police were also wondering, what was the motive? Even though they had the evidence that Donald was connected to Genai's murder, nothing in their research connected him to Genai.
It's given I'm about to be real pissed off, y'all. It's given I'm about to be real pissed off.
So, at the beginning of the interrogation, detectives read Donald his Miranda rights, and they ask him if he has anything to say. And he seems confused, and he's like, well, actually, I'd like for you to explain why I'm here. And so they show him a picture of Genai's car and ask him if he'd ever seen the vehicle or been in it. He repeatedly denied that he'd been in the car or even knew anyone who had that car. He also said that although his parents lived in Gwinnett County, he hadn't lived there in almost 3 years and was living downtown. He actually seemed to be transient, like he either lived in a transition house or sort of moved from place to place. And as the interrogation goes on and he finds out that he's being charged with murder, he tells police that he was nervous when they first arrested him. But once they told him that it was for the murder of a woman, he wasn't nervous anymore because he knew he had nothing to do with it. He seemed to be in disbelief and even said that he would take a polygraph test. And so police continue to bring on the evidence. They show him the surveillance video, and Donald looked at it and insisted that wasn't him. And I'm actually going to play you his reaction to this video.
Yeah, girl, I'm going to need to see that. I'm going to need to see that.
Oh, am I looking at this guy right here?
Yeah. You're saying that's not you?
That is definitely not me. I don't have a shirt like that. I only can't even see the face on that person, but that's not me.
Okay. So that's not you?
No, definitely not me.
That's not you? Okay.
It's not me. Take a lie detector test now. That's
Okay.
not me.
Why he look at the cop like that?
He's telling him that's not him. You asking me again, that's not you. I'm telling you that's not me.
It was the third time the cop said, that's not you, and he just went. I was like, oh, okay. Okay, sir.
So the interrogation continues. He tells the police he's familiar with Gwinnett Place Mall because he would catch the bus at the transit center that was near the mall. And when they asked him when was the last time he was there, he said probably a few weeks ago because that would be the transit center he would come to anytime he came out to visit his family. And when detectives finally bring up the fact that Donald's DNA was found in Genai's car, he explains to them that it's possible the DNA could belong to his twin brother Ronald because twins share DNA.
Girl, I'm not going to lie to you. I haven't looked into this case. But when you showed me that video, I saw a thumbnail and I did save. In fact, this could have been a situation of us doing the same episode because I saved the video that was like my evil twin brother X, Y, and Z. And so I was familiar with the background. I was like, why does this look so familiar? And that is why. So I didn't watch the video. I don't know anything about this case, but that is fascinating.
Yes, it is. And I'm sure, especially if you've never heard of this case, your initial reaction is like, oh, how convenient. The twin brother, Ronald. I will say he'd actually mentioned his twin brother multiple times throughout the interrogation. So this wasn't the first time detectives were hearing about this. They'd been asking him about his family and all of this. So his twin brother had come up multiple times. And when detectives brought up that the phone linked to the phone number he'd provided in that application had been active near the crime scene, he tells them that that number actually belonged to his brother Ronald, and he'd used it when he was applying for the job because at that time he was transient and didn't have a phone. So the phone number he provided actually wasn't his, it was his brother Ronald's.
Interesting.
And earlier in the interrogation, he had mentioned to police that he and his brother weren't very close. And despite this, he did seem very hesitant to say anything that would further implicate his brother, including the color of his brother's phone and where he was currently staying. And as he went through this interrogation, it did seem like he was grappling with the reality of what his brother might have done. You can even see him wiping away tears at certain points of the interview.
Look, maybe I don't love my siblings enough, but if I get pulled into an interrogation room because my sibling murdered somebody, when I tell you I am going to stretch, I'm going to make sure I'm nice and limber before I throw them under that bus and run them completely over. And then I'm going to throw it in reverse and hit them one more time just to be sure. Maybe I don't love my siblings enough, but that's just me.
I will say at this point, all he knows is that the DNA was at the crime scene. He's seen the surveillance footage, but he's even asking the police, so you're sure the person in this footage definitely murdered the woman? And he doesn't even know what the DNA is from. He's like, is it spit? Is it something else? So I'm sure in his head, he's thinking, okay, maybe it just looks bad for him. Maybe he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and trying to probably justify it in his head. And so doesn't want to throw his sibling onto the bus without being sure that he definitely committed this.
That's valid.
And he has also been in prison himself.
Of course, that is perfectly valid. But for me, with the context of me being somebody who takes in a lot of true crime, if I heard that DNA was connected to the scene, I'm singing like a canary. Because the DNA being connected to the scene, unless this is a Luigi situation where it's not actually connected to the scene and they just pulled that out of their butt, I'm singing like a canary. And I'm throwing my siblings under the bus. I am. I do feel bad for him because I'm sure the realization that your sibling, especially your twin sibling, has potentially murdered somebody and you are now being connected to it because you're the one with the criminal record. I'm sure that's devastating.
Right. And there is also the thing where people believe very strongly snitches get stitches, especially stitching on your family. I actually don't know what I would do in this situation, especially knowing my family members and not believing that most of them could commit a crime like this. There are certain family members where I might believe it, but still not believing that your family member could commit a crime like this and just reeling because when you came in here, you were thinking you were being accused of something and you knew you didn't do it. But then it becomes clear that, oh, I didn't do it, but I do know who did. And I didn't think that this person could do it. I will say, I would definitely recommend that you still watch the full interrogation because I think it offers such an interesting perspective into psychology just to see the different reactions and way that they process this. But that being said, even though police can confirm that Donald does have a twin brother, Ronald, still, it is clear that someone's DNA was tied to this scene. And even if he has a twin brother, it's not clear that it was his or the twin brother's DNA. So they're not just going to release Donald because he suddenly revealed that he has a twin brother. So Donald agrees to take a polygraph test. But when he takes the test, it indicates that he was showing deception. And when he's talking to police about this, he said, yeah, it probably did. And it was probably picking up his nerves because as he was taking the test, all he could think about was his brother doing the things that they were accusing him of. And when you think about a polygraph test, it picks up spikes in your pulses. And so I could imagine, especially if you didn't think that your brother could do that and you're still grappling with the fact that your brother did this, I could imagine that setting somebody's pulse off.
Yeah, I could see it. Trust me, I'm not a proponent of lie detector tests. I think they're irrelevant. They need to be phased out of criminal procedures because they're completely worthless. You can't use them in court. They won't help you if you pass. They won't help you if you fail. It doesn't matter. If you pass, police will just say that you're a very good liar. And if you fail, then they'll just use that excuse to put even more pressure on you. Like, it just doesn't matter. Please don't ever take a polygraph test. Ever. Get an attorney, another thing too. Because this is another thing that's kind of bothering me. Because Donald, if what you are saying is true, the bargaining chip you could have used if you had an attorney.
Right.
Your attorney would have got you home that day. A public defender would have got you home that day. Like, you didn't even have to have an attorney. This is the thing I want people to understand. Like, public defenders work in the courthouses where these cases are going to be heard. They know the prosecutors. They have relationships with those people. And you want that.
Mm-hmm.
So a public defender in Atlanta would have got you home that day.
Yeah.
With this news that you have this twin brother with a maybe potentially clean record, and all of a sudden some weird stuff's happening and it's getting tied to you because you're the felon. Oh, you would have had it would have been a field day for your attorney.
And that's the thing. I was like, where is the man's lawyer?
Yes.
You sitting here just talking to the police, no protection, no lawyer.
Come on now.
It was crazy.
Come on now. But to go back and talk about the polygraph side of this, like, I can get what you're saying, but it does just sound like a sketchy excuse. Like a sketchy reasoning of like, yeah, I'm sure I failed because I was feeling all these other emotions. Which, like, sure. Or you're guilty. And this is why, again, polygraphs don't matter because this didn't help him or hurt him. I don't believe him any more or believe him any less after he took this polygraph test.
Yeah. And he was kind of trying to use it as a bargaining chip because he was trying to get a phone call because he wanted to call his parents, not to say, oh, don't let Ronald leave the house or tell Ronald to hide, but just to let them know what was going on, that he'd been arrested and was being accused of murder. But police didn't want him to make this call. They said, when you get to the jail, you can make your call, but we're not going to let you make the call right now. And so he was trying to use it as, I'll do the polygraph test if y'all let me make this call. But they still kind of played him and said, we're not going to let you make the call. And he still took it.
And that's the thing, too. If you say nothing, you still get to make the call. What you need to do is go in there and say, I am invoking my right to remain silent. I wish to have an attorney, and I do not wish to answer any of your questions without my attorney present. Right. And you go in there and you shut the fuck up. Just shut the fuck up. That's all you need to do. And then, of course, they would have left you there for hours to try to see if you would change your mind and talk and everything else. Stay strong. And then go to the jail and make your phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the power. I don't think people understand how much power you have when you remain silent.
Very true. And I will say he comes back from the polygraph, talks to the police. At this point, even though he seemed hesitant before, he actually told police during a smoke break that he was sure the person in the video was his brother. And I'm also going to play this part of the interrogation for you.
But when you showed me the video and I seen it, I see everything about it. It's his watch. I can see the phone. But those numbers you say that were made from that particular point at that point were people that he knew. I don't know those people. And the person was buying a beer. He always gets beer and traveling. I don't drink beer like that at all. And anyone that we know, mother and father, was to see that same video, anybody that we know, would know that that's him and not me. Okay. Not only by demeanor, but certainly by dress. I don't wear clothes like he wears clothes. That's the one thing that does differentiate us. Now, again, I don't know the particulars about your case. This DNA that you're talking about, like I said, I don't know if it came off a bottle or can or out of the woman. I don't know. But it wasn't me.
And on the point about the dress, for our audio only listeners, I will say Donald is dressed pretty sharp. He is in a plaid button-up shirt and pants. And in their surveillance footage, the person is wearing a t-shirt, baseball t-shirt kind of thing with loose pants. So on that point, I will definitely say he got a point. He is dressed sharp. And the person in that video is not dressed sharp.
And you want to know something that I find really interesting is when he said, anybody who saw that video would know it's Ronald and not me. And I thought about how even the coworkers before said it looks similar to Donald, but they didn't say, oh yeah, that's Donald. And of course, this is security footage. It could be grainy as all get out, right? But to give a mouse a cookie, I think that's a valid thing to think about.
Yeah. And when the police had said before that people had identified that as him in the surveillance footage, he said, was it people that knew I had a twin brother? And he even said, I don't have friends. So I don't know who you asked. So it could have been where the coworkers are like, yeah, that's the person I worked with for a bit and spoke to maybe 20 minutes to an hour or a few days a week.
Yeah.
And also to the point about showing the footage to his family, since detectives wouldn't allow Donald to make a call, he asked that they show the video to the people in his family and tells detectives they will be able to identify the person in that video as Ronald and not him. So detectives do just that. But since they still couldn't be 100% sure that Donald wasn't responsible, they charged him with murder and booked him in jail the night of his arrest. The next day, when they went to show the video to Donald's sister, she confidently identified the person in the video as Ronald. And when police were like, well, how can you tell? They look just alike. She said, yeah, they look alike. They look identical. There is not even a scar or mole that differentiates them, but their mannerisms are very different. And when they go to show the video to the parents, they also identified the person in the video as Ronald. And they even called Ronald while police were there, and he agreed to come to their house the next day. Of course, police didn't say, hey, we suspect one of your sons of murder. Can you tell us who it is? They said, oh, we are trying to get in touch with them. We believe they witnessed a murder, and we need to speak to one of them. Their sister did not believe this. She was like, no, there's something more to this. Y'all got to tell me what's going on. And they said, no, they're not suspects. We just believe they witnessed the murder. Police can lie to you, and they will.
They can lie to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all be forgetting that.
So yeah, just in case anybody was thinking, dang, the family just sold them out like that. They didn't know exactly what they were doing. So soon after getting to his parents' house the next day, Ronald was arrested and taken into custody on February 6, 2010. And a point on DNA. It is not technically true that twins share the exact same DNA. There are actually very tiny differences in the DNA of twins, but the tests used in most investigations aren't able to pick up on these differences, which is why in the typical test that you use, twins would seem to have the same DNA.
And I also just want to add clarification because some people may not realize this is specifically for identical twins.
Yes.
Twins who split an embryo of some kind. This is not for fraternal twins. Fraternal twins will have different DNA.
Yeah.
Same way you and your siblings will have different DNA.
That's a great point. Thank you for that clarification. And even though identical twins will share very similar DNA, the one thing that is unique to everybody, despite whether you are an identical twin or not, is your fingerprint. So police fingerprint both Ronald and Donald, and they compare them to the fingerprints that they found at the scene. And when they ran the analysis, the fingerprints came back to match Ronald.
Ronald, now how do you know Genai? Explain right now how you know Genai and why you did this to this woman and why you potentially set up your brother that's already a felon.
Now, police are wondering the same thing. I will say Ronald's interrogation is very different from his brother's. When Donald came in, he definitely seemed a little nervous, but for the most part, he was calm and matter of fact. Like he said, he knew he didn't do this. Once they told him it was murder, he said, I might have done some illegal things, but I know I didn't do no murder. Ronald, on the other hand, was clearly nervous, stumbling over his words. And when asked if he wanted to tell detectives anything, he said, quote, not right now, end quote. He was concerned that his brother was still in custody and wanted him to be released. And detectives realized that he is not going to tell them anything right now. So they might have to wait a little bit, push on him, do things to make him talk and open up. So while in custody, detectives allow him to make a phone call to his quote unquote kinda sorta girlfriend that he's known for 45 years.
I'm sorry. I needed to laugh at that. What you mean, yo, kind of men make me sick. Men make me sick. Cause what you mean, yo, kind of sort of girlfriend that you know for 45 years.
He described her as a person that he's known for a really long time, and when detectives asked if that's his girlfriend, he said, kinda, sorta.
Oh, so they've been sleeping together for the last 45 years is what I'm hearing.
What I'm hearing is he always knows where home is.
Oh, God. He knows where the pillows are warm and fluffy. Go ahead.
And even in the interrogation video that shows this phone call, you can hear her being distraught and asking him if he did it as he wipes away tears. And I'm going to play that for you too.
Oh, that poor woman.
This phone call was harder than I thought it was gonna be.
I need to know. Are you guilty of something? Did you do something?
Yeah, I had my share of guilt. I don't even know what to say. I don't know. I just don't know what. I don't know. I just don't know what to say. And if I did, I wouldn't know how to say it. I tell you this, Deb. I'm in deep. Yes, I am. I'll lay you back, Tuzo. Bye bye.
Still be your girlfriend?
Oh my God, the silence was deafening. Oh my God, the silence was deafening. Oh, that's awful. That's horrible. And you can hear she's so upset.
Right. And this was the first phone call he made before he talked to his parents, his sister, anyone else.
His kind of sort of girlfriend. Dang. But also, there's your answer, boo. Because if he took 15 seconds to pause, which I'm going to leave in, I'm not going to edit out. That pause, and then I have my fair share of guilt tells you everything you need to know. Oh, that's horrible.
And clearly the call did what police hoped it did. It made him very emotional, and he was even still crying when detectives came back in. Still, he's not telling them why he did it. They continue to ask him, and he says he's not confessing to anything. They show him a picture of Genai and tell him about the life that she lived. And at one point, while looking at her photo, Ronald could be heard whispering, quote, "I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm sorry," end quote. Detectives even bring in his brother, thinking that his brother will get him to incriminate himself. But his brother actually just spends most of the time telling him what to expect when he gets to jail. He does ask him why, but he doesn't harp on it, which from a sibling I can understand.
Especially considering earlier he wasn't trying to throw him under the bus and be like, oh yeah, my brother absolutely did it.
Right. And also considering his brother was taken to jail after being charged with murder. So he knows exactly what his brother is about to go through. And he comes in there and is like, listen, I'm going to tell you what's about to happen. They're going to take you to jail because you were committed for a violent crime. They're going to put you in one of those turtle suits so you don't harm yourself. And this is what's going to happen. Very matter of fact. So when that didn't work, detectives continue to break him down by appealing to his emotions and ask him why. And they even give him the out that maybe this was accidental. And it definitely seems to be working. He finally tells detectives that he'll talk after a smoke break. To add even more to the pile of evidence against him, during his interrogation, detectives give him the smoke break he asked for. And during this break, they see him pull out and smoke a Bronson Light Long, the same brand of cigarette that was found at the scene. And when they come back, they actually allow him to sit away from the camera because they figured having to confess directly in front of the camera would add even more pressure. So he confesses and tells detectives that he had been drinking that night and intended to just carjack Genai for her vehicle, but that his gun, a .357 Magnum, went off accidentally due to a quote-unquote hair trigger. He also denied that he'd pulled her out of the car and told detectives that she'd gotten out herself in shock. He ends his confession telling police that she didn't deserve this and that he didn't mean to shoot her.
I don't believe that for half a second. I'm going to be real with you. Here's my thing. If this is the gun I think it is, then yes, it does have a light trigger. It does. If this is the gun I think it is, it does not take a lot to pull the trigger. But my issue is you open the door of a woman and pointed a gun at her with your finger on this light trigger. If you know nothing about guns and you don't know anything about gun safety, number one rule of gun safety is never point a gun at anyone or anything that you don't intend to shoot. Number two, never put your finger on the trigger unless you tend to pull it. These are basic things that you do. And again, I'm sure somebody who was just got drunk and decided they needed to rob somebody of their vehicle is not exercising proper gun safety. But to me, it says a lot that, again, you went in finger on the trigger to rob a woman that you didn't know.
Right. And since we're about to get to the trial and everything, I'm going to say what I think happened. I think Ronald was drunk. I also think he had or has an alcohol problem because I do think his guilt was real. I think his tears were real, and I think his guilt about the situation was very real. And I think that he was drunk, and that's why he pulled the trigger. I actually don't think he meant to shoot her, but I think he was so drunk that he did not have control of his weapon.
Interesting. Then actually, I misunderstood the order of events. So he's saying that he was drunk at the time of the murder.
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood that. I thought you were saying that he had got drunk the night before and decided that he was going to rob somebody because he got drunk the night before.
No, he had been drinking. Remember in the surveillance footage, they saw him buy alcohol twice.
Correct.
In a 2-hour period.
Correct. Okay, yes, you're correct. You're correct. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. Drunk and playing with guns is never a good combination. So that makes a lot more sense. I don't know, maybe I'm a lot more of a vindictive person. I'm not going to say that like all of his tears aren't real, but I do think there is still, especially like from the snippet of the interrogation that you showed me, that the tears were for himself.
Oh, for sure.
And there was a little bit of like pitying himself of like, I can't believe that this is happening to me. And, you know, I haven't watched the full interrogation. I am going to go watch it later. So yeah, it's always hard for me, like in interrogations when people start crying and everything else. Cause I'm like, are you crying because you feel guilty? Are you crying because the world lost this beautiful, wonderful, amazing person that you took away from them? Or are you crying because you've been caught and now your life is over?
And I honestly think both of those can be true. Like, I don't think you have to have one emotion or one, like, I don't think you have to have one thing that's fueling your emotion. We're complicated as humans. I really do think that he was feeling guilty for what he did. And he was sad because he realized his past had finally caught up to him. And not saying that he is an alcoholic, but having known alcoholics and recovering alcoholics, there is generally a lot of guilt attached to the things that you do when you're drunk. But I do think it's true that part of his tears were for himself, but part of his tears were for Genai and what he knew he did to her.
I can definitely understand where you're coming from. I think this is also a point where I need to kind of voice my biases. I've had, that Cam is well aware of, not as pleasant experiences with people who are alcoholics or just drink way too much. Maybe that's why I'm having a harder time and I'm being a little bit meaner than I probably would be, because my experience has been quite the opposite. A lot of denial that things happen when people got drunk. A lot of pretending to not remember that things happened when people got drunk. Rarely ever have the alcoholics in my life ever acknowledged that they did something wrong when they sobered up and instead tried to play victim.
And I will say guilt doesn't mean that they're confessing.
Correct.
The feeling of guilt can be very internal and actually fuels what you're talking about, which is denial, projection, all of that. I think that still stems from guilt. And I'm sure that if Ronald wasn't confronted with all this evidence, he would be doing the same thing. Denying.
Yeah.
And I also think that just because somebody feels bad and regrets what they did, that doesn't take away from what they did. He still killed Genai. I'm not saying that we should feel bad for him. I'm simply discussing the emotions that I think are going through his head at the time, especially because such a big question throughout this case was why this happened.
Right.
And before I move on to the trial, I will also say that after it was clear that Ronald was the one who committed this crime, charges against Donald were dropped and he was released from jail.
Okay, good.
So on April 28th, 2010, nearly 2 years after Genai's murder, Ronald Smith was indicted by a Gwinnett County grand jury for malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, hijacking a motor vehicle, and 3 counts of possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. Ronald pleaded not guilty and went to trial in October 2012. During the trial, Ronald retracted his confession and blamed his twin brother, Donald, claiming he was only helping Donald clean up. His defense contended that his fingerprints were on the car because he had helped his brother clean it. The prosecution, on the other hand, argued that the shooting was not accidental, citing the witness account of Ronald cursing at Genai before he shot her. And on October 30th, 2012, after 1 day of deliberation, the jury would find Ronald Smith guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison for the malice murder charge, 20 consecutive years for the hijacking charge, and 5 consecutive years on the firearm charges. In total, he got life plus 25 years. And it was very bold of him to plead not guilty.
Here's the thing, though. And here I was being like, Devin, you're coming from a hurt place. You need to give grace. You know, he seems to be confessing and talking about that he did it. So, you know, check yourself. Check yourself. Because I constantly stay checking myself in real life, in real time. And now I just feel validated.
And I will say, I think his guilt in the interrogation was real. But I think afterwards, that ego popped back up. And it said, maybe there is a way out of this. I think after he got off the phone with his kind of sort of girlfriend and he was feeling emotional and all that, and he was looking at Genai's picture, he actually was feeling guilty. But then he got that lawyer. That lawyer said, ooh, you have a twin brother? I think we can get you out of this. And that ego was speaking to him.
Girl, maybe. But like, my thing is, I'm going to be real with you. I'm never surprised when people plead not guilty, even after confessing. I'm never surprised by that because the vast majority of people plead not guilty, right? Where he lost me is the choice of defense. The choice of defense is always the thing that pisses me off, right? Because real life, in the interrogation, he gave you the best option for him to not go to jail for life was accidental. Because at the end of the day, murder is a charge that includes malice and choice.
Right.
But if his whole thing is, I did this on accident and he wasn't charged with manslaughter, that's how you get not guilty. And I think you might be able to get a jury that I'm not on, honestly. That's like, he's a recovering alcoholic and he was.
Well, we don't know that for sure.
I know we don't know that, but I'm talking about what argument we gonna make in the courtroom. Okay.
Got you.
He's a recovering alcoholic. He was drunk that day. He went to the store just to buy alcohol. This is concerning behavior. And in his drunken state, he made a terrible choice, but an accident occurred as a result of that terrible choice. That's the argument. That's the argument. But nah, my brother absolutely shot her and I was just helping clean up some evidence.
Not only did you lose your freedom, any chance you had of it, I am very sure you lost the support of all your family.
Absolutely.
Because I'm sure that his family was hurt that he would do something like this. But especially if he said, I got drunk, y'all know I got a problem with alcohol. It was an accident. I didn't mean to shoot her. I'm sure his family still would have made time to visit him in prison, make sure he knew they didn't forget about him. But you gonna throw your brother under the bus? Bye.
It's OV.
Right.
It's OV. And again, here's the real situation is people be lying in court all the time. Even if you ain't no alcoholic, lean into it.
Right.
Lean into it. Because a lot of people are very sympathetic to that. I'm not one of them. I'm going to be real with you. I'm not one of them. But it's coming from a hurt place. I'm talking from a hurt place. But a lot of people are sympathetic to that. And again, I didn't believe his story until Cam clarified that he was drunk at the time of the incident. And then I was like, you know what? I absolutely can believe in a world where he pulled the trigger accidentally because he was drunk. That's completely believable. I'm not trying to give people better arguments, but
yeah,
clearly I'm glad he's going to jail forever because he deserves it.
Yeah.
But like, at least pick a good argument. At least be respectful in your argument. Give yourself a fighting chance.
And I'm like, so let's say his argument is his brother is the one that actually killed her. And his brother said, oh, Ronald, I need you to help me with this. It is a known fact that at that time, In July, Donald didn't have a phone.
So how is he getting in contact with you?
How is he getting in contact with you?
Quickly.
And I'm sure when he was found in that surveillance footage, it was soon after he dropped the car off. So police are like, well, you would have had to get to him real quick to be able to make it there in time and be seen on the footage.
Especially in Forest Park.
In Forest Park. I'm like, your argument is falling apart.
Yeah, that's so dumb.
But yeah, I believe that was all ego. I really do feel like people who have addictions and alcohol problems actually feel very weak and insecure. And so once you break them down and corner them, that is when they show their true weak colors. But that ego builds back up very quickly and makes them feel like they are better than everybody else and they deserve it all and everybody else deserves nothing.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, substance abuse and alcoholism is a mental health issue, right? And people seek out different vices to control their mental health issues, right? But honestly, I also don't think it's just ego. I think it's self-preservation. It is literally, well, yeah, I did it, but I don't want to go to jail forever.
Right.
I don't want to lose my life just because I took somebody else's senselessly
For no reason. And I think that's also the super frustrating thing here. She did nothing to him other than not react quickly enough for him when a gun was in her face.
She was a complete stranger to him.
Right.
She didn't even know him. And I worry about people who can pull firearms on strangers. What is wrong with you?
I worry about people who can pull a firearm on somebody that's not threatening you.
Hello.
So, despite his conviction, Ronald would, of course, appeal the decision, saying that the trial court improperly commented on a witness's credibility. Essentially, what had happened was the witness who saw the attack, the bus driver, was giving their testimony, and they told the court that they needed a break. And when the court asked, they said it's not about the case. They just had a lot going on. I think they'd had some sort of procedure recently. And so when the court came back, they said, we're going to try and wrap up the cross-examination. The witness is upset. It's not because of the case. They're upset about something else. And in his appeal, he said that was an improper commentary on the witness's credibility. This is linked to cases where, say, for instance, one of the witnesses is a doctor and the prosecution says, yeah, he never gets anything wrong to the court. That would be improper commentary on the witness's credibility because it could shape the jury's perception. Or on the flip side, if the defense were to make something trying to discredit that witness that wasn't based in fact. So that's what he was trying to say they did. And the appellate court said that's a reach and affirmed the murder conviction and his sentence. However, they did state that the conviction and sentence for possession of a firearm during the commission of aggravated assault should be vacated since it actually merged with the charge for possession of a firearm during the commission of murder. So that was the one change they made. So he went from life plus 25 years to life plus 5 years. And Ronald Smith is currently incarcerated at Wheeler Correctional Facility in Alamo, Georgia. Now, as we like to do, we're going to end this case talking about Genai. Her family and loved ones recalled that she'd actually had plans to one day go back to Elkhart, Indiana, and open a preschool academy. This was not a surprise for those who knew her. One of her daughters, Lakeisha Coleman, stated that the family still grieves her loss and said that the hurt will always be there, especially because her mother was just, quote, minding her own business, end quote. And that's the end of our story.
Wow. Genai seemed like such a lovely person. And again, a loving person, a giving person. She wanted to go back to Indiana. I know actually several people from Indiana, and none of them have plans to ever go back to Indiana. So for her to be like, I'm going back to Indiana and I'm going to invest in the community that I grew up in is beautiful. And for her to be senselessly taken off of this earth by somebody who was drunk and evil and had malice in their heart as they were found guilty of malice murder is so sad and devastating. But I wish her family the best. I wish them healing, love, reminders of how amazing she was. And I hope that this conviction brought you justice. And I hope that even if it doesn't heal you, it gives you the tools to do so.
Right. Because I will say it is additionally painful to know that your loved one was taken and not know who did it or why they did it. And on top of that, families who have lost loved ones and maybe aren't even sure that they're dead and don't know where they are. So that is the only silver lining I can find, very thin silver lining I can find, is that they know who and they think they know why. But really, the only person who knows that for sure is Ronald.
Right. And Ronald's refusal to take ownership of that is the number one reason why you can never find closure in other people. Closure has to come from within. Closure is a healing process that you have to take. Because if you put your faith in the people who hurt you, they will use it to continue to hurt you.
That's a word.
I had to learn the hard way. Closure comes from within, which is why I hope that the conviction gives them peace, not that Ronald gives them peace.
And knowing who Genai was and that she loved them, she loved the people in her life, she loved the people around her. And Ronald can never take that away.
Exactly. As we wrap up today's discussion, we're going to move into our segment called Today in Crime, where we'll discuss a crime or crime-related event that took place on this day. So, on October 24th, 1935, Arthur Flagenheimer, better known as notorious mobster Dutch Schultz, died after being shot by Charles the Bug Workman, a hitman from Murder Incorporated, acting on orders from the Commission, the national ruling body of the mob. The attack took place the night before at the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey, where Schultz and 3 of his associates were ambushed. The assassination was ordered because the notorious, quote, beer baron, end quote, had defied the commissioner's direct command not to kill Special Prosecutor Thomas Dewey. Schultz's growing recklessness and determination to assassinate Dewey were deemed too dangerous, posing a threat to the entire organized crime infrastructure. Born Arthur Flagenheimer in the Bronx in 1902, Schultz swiftly ascended the ranks of the New York City underworld. He first made his name during Prohibition through highly lucrative bootlegging operations, which earned him his famous moniker, the quote, beer baron, end quote. After the repeal of the 18th Amendment, he successfully transitioned his criminal empire into the immensely profitable Harlem numbers game. His vicious ambition and high-profile feuds, however, led to an increasing disregard for mob protocol and law enforcement, ultimately sealing his violent fate. The shooting commenced on the night of October 23rd, 1935, when workmen and at least one other gunman entered the Palace Chop House. Schultz was shot while in the men's room, while his 3 top men were ambushed in the back room. The 4 wounded men were rushed to the hospital, but Schultz's associates quickly succumbed to their injuries. Schultz himself lingered until the next day, delivering a series of highly incoherent and rambling deathbed remarks that were transcribed by a police stenographer and have since become a famous, though enigmatic, part of his final performance. In the aftermath, Schultz's vast empire was quietly and quickly absorbed by his rivals, preventing a major gang war. The investigation eventually resurfaced with the 1940 Murder Incorporated case, leading to testimony that implicated Workman. He was the only person ever convicted in connection with the murder, serving 23 years in prison. Despite the conviction, several aspects of the hit remain unsettled, including the true identity of the getaway driver and the persistent rumors that Schultz's final, delirious words contained clues to a legendary cache of hidden treasures. And that is what happened on this day. If you found this story interesting, leave a beer emoji in the comments.
I will say Prohibition is what brought the mob up.
Facts.
Like, they took that and ran. Because if you go and make something illegal, especially alcohol, people going to find a way to get it.
Supply and demand. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all weren't supplying. The demand was there.
Exactly. Any other thoughts, friend?
Nope, that's all I've got.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on this episode. I would especially like to thank Oxygen True Crime, Investigation Discovery, and the Law and Crime Network for providing most of the material for this episode. If you'd like to check out photos related to this case, Follow us at Criminalish Podcast on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
Listeners, if you like what you hear, be sure to leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening to the Criminalish Podcast. And if you're listening to us on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our channel and leave any comments or questions down below. As always, stay nosy, my friends. Bye.
Bye.